Hi, I'm Bob Butler from KCBS Radio. Welcome to a forum on candidates running for the California State Assembly 14th District. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa Clerk Recorder, Contra Costa Television, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa. We're recording these roundtables here in the studio of Contra Costa Television. As part of our live broadcast, we invite you to ask the candidates questions. You can direct your message or your post of your question on Twitter at EngageCoCo. The 14th Assembly District includes Concord, Clayton, Pleasant Hill, Martinez, most of Pittsburgh, a small portion of Walnut Creek, Bay Point, Clyde, Pacheco, Alhambra Valley, Briones. It also includes part of Solano County. The candidates are, to my right, Cassandra Devereaux, to my left, Janelle Proctor, and to my far left, Tim Brayson. We lost before the show to determine who was going to speak first, and we'll begin with, we didn't draw lots. I'm going to just take a pick. You're my right?
All right.
Cassandra Devereaux, please take it away with it all.
And I got first question.
Well, I'm glad they told you that. Go ahead. Well, actually, can you give me about a 60-second opening statement about why you're running?
I am running. I'm a member of the Peace and Freedom Party, People's Alliance. I'm running because I look around and there's a lot of need in the community. Obviously, the city of Vallejo has been in the news a lot because of a police department that is the highest in per capita police killings in Northern California. The people of Vallejo, including the families of many of the men of color who've been killed, have been trying to bring this to people's attention. Meanwhile, the City Council of Vallejo has really been giving cover to the police. They had a vote that would allow them to destroy documents. They gave the police a raise and loosened controls on drug testing, and it really seems that there's no intention in the city to hold them to account. So hearing that call is a huge thing that inspired me to come and run today.
Thank you. Janelle Proctor.
Yes, well, I love California, and I would like to stay. I don't want to have to leave, as many of my friends and colleagues are having to do as their families grow and the expenses in California keep increasing, and we keep continuing to be taxed. So I'm here because I want to stay. I love California and would like to find ways to make it affordable. And I've paid into the tax system for 20 years now, and I would like to be able to reap the benefits and rewards by being able to stay and retire here and not have to move to another state.
Thank you. Mr. Grayson.
Thank you for asking. I started engaging the community as a chaplain for the Concord Police Department and still currently serve as their critical response chaplain. And then through that, the opportunity opened for me to serve on local city council. So I served as a council member and then elevated to vice mayor, and then for 2 years served as the mayor of Concord. And from there, the voters gave me the opportunity, and I have the privilege of being able to serve as the assembly member of the 14th District. California is a unique state in the sense that we have the honor of being the 5th largest economy in the world, which makes us a bit responsible, not just on a state or national, but global level. We pass policies that provide leadership for other states, but also for other countries. And also to be able to stay so engaged with the local community at the same time is a privilege of mine, to be able to live here, work in Sacramento, come back and stay here and engage with the constituency, and to know their needs, and to be able to go and make a difference and pass policies that touch people in their real lives at home and at work right here in our community means a lot to me.
Okay. So I don't do the kind of thing like I'm going to ask you each one question and can you all answer it. I'm going to go for it. So if you're elected, what's your first priority?
Yes, I would like to make bills that are understandable, meaning language that makes sense. For example, the last recent gas tax, which I pay a lot in gas with my commute every day, was worded in such a way many people were confused. They didn't know what they were voting for. So that would be my first initiative, to make sure that language in bills is understandable for the voters in California.
We just had a forum on Measure J, which is on the ballot coming up in March. What is your view on Measure J?
You know, I've been so focused on the Vallejo piece that I could stand to educate myself on J, to be honest. I see so much terror going on. I see families who are just crying out to be heard, just crying out for some kind of justice. And when that's happening, that's where my attention goes completely. And of course, you know, it's not just Vallejo, it's my migrant neighbors who are terrorized wherever they go. I volunteer at a place that serves as a meeting place for Latino people. And what I do is I just make sure that if law enforcement enters, that they have an executive warrant, because they're terrorized just to leave the house. And this is where I am mostly focused. I'm focused on the people who need help, who are living in fear, who are crying out for justice. And everything else is, you know, extraneous to that for now.
So what would your first priority be if you were elected?
Well, I mentioned the piece, and definitely what I would like to do is to push for the police of Vallejo to be put under state executive receivership. I think that they have shown that they're unwilling to hold themselves to account. The city of Vallejo has shown themselves completely unwilling to hold them to account. I think they need the state to step in to look at the shooting reports, look at the use of force reports, look at everything they do, so that we have an outside agency. And I think it needs to be transparent so the people of Vallejo feel that they really know what's going on and that they are being served.
What about the priorities for the other cities in your district, though?
The other cities in the district, well, I think that the police issue obviously goes to every city. In Concord, Contra Costa, Sheriff Livingston was asked to provide some information about a complaint against the deputy, and it took him over a year to get that. So I think we need a complete overhaul of the way that our law enforcement agencies are held accountable. It is a problem all around. Vallejo is the most egregious example, but I don't think we can overlook any law enforcement agency.
Mr. Grayson, you're up in Sacramento now.
Yes, sir.
So I'm assuming that there are some things you'd like to do better if you're reelected?
Yes, absolutely.
And please share those with us.
So started out, my first priority when I got up there was to not only land my feet but to make an impact. And we did. We made a huge impact through the UC system, placing students there, and getting our in-state students at a higher priority than out-of-state students who were paying more in tuition. So we were able to make some headway there, but to do better, I think it's obvious because what we're seeing on the streets today, we have a huge homeless issue that every single one of us are witnessing. And that is a part of the housing crisis that we're facing right here in the state of California. So to do better or to do more, it would be along the lines of helping our homeless find the services that they need and the shelter that they need, as well as addressing the housing crisis that we're in and the affordability that we're all facing.
One of the big issues, especially we've had a situation in Oakland recently where women took over a house that was up for sale that actually had been bought by what we could be called a housing speculator, somebody who's going to buy the house, refurbish it, and resell it. There's been a big cry on a big concern about these real estate companies coming in and buying up homes so the local folks can't afford to buy them anymore. What would you do about that, or anything?
So obviously, we have a huge issue with the ability to afford a home in the state of California. A lot of that does have to do with inventory that's in the market, Economics 101, supply and demand. So being able to provide a way for developers to build more homes and make it more available on the market would obviously have impact as far as the cost and affordability of the home. But then also make sure that we're not just looking at housing, especially when it comes to homeless, and the situation that that you had mentioned in Oakland, not just looking at the house itself, but to also look at the services that are needed, especially from those that have found themselves without shelter or without a home to go to in the evening, to be able to make sure that it's not just sheltering someone or storing them away, but it's also providing all the other services that that person may be very well may be in need of in their life.
This issue I mentioned in Oakland, this is a real estate company that's bought a bunch of different homes and took them off the market. They're going to refurbish them and they're going to sell them, and it's going to raise the market price in the neighborhood. Is that a good practice?
That's a difficult question because on one hand, if you are in that neighborhood and your home value goes up, people are for that. But then on the flip side, if you're trying to enter the market, as many young folks are, then they're restricted. So I do think that there needs to be, the communities need to come together. There needs to be some accountability. I'm not for stopping commerce or business because obviously that helps our entire economy in the end. But yes, there definitely needs to be a balance so that people can stay in their homes. Also, young families can enter in and have the opportunity to own a home. And that's part of the reason why I commute right now such a long distance is because of that issue. As you get further south to the Bay, the affordability is just, it's pretty outrageous.
Yeah,
and I'm sure most are commuting for this.
I had a
reason.
conversation with a family member whose young son wants to move out. He got a job at Costco, and he's now want to get his own apartment. He's 18. And I don't think he understands that that means you have to pay for your own rent, your own car note, your own insurance, your own food. We've talked about, right now, rent control is a hot issue in California.
Yes.
Do you think that rent control should be expanded?
I think it should be expanded. I think there needs to be a cap on rents, but I would go further. I think that, well, you know, the United Nations sent an observer to the Bay Area, and they found homelessness, or I should say houselessness, because they have a home in these communities, they just don't have a house. They found it to be a humanitarian crisis. And as such, I think we have to completely end the speculation. It is completely out of control. It is immoral. And in fact, I think because this is a state of crisis, we need to move people into homes, whether it is requisitioning these homes for people. Because the thing is, there are more empty homes, empty houses, than there are houseless people. We could put everyone in a house, but as a society, somehow we've chosen not to. That is a priority that is completely upside down, backwards. It's against human flourishing. It's immoral, and it cannot be allowed.
Mr. Grayson, up in Sacramento, do you think there's an appetite for more rent control?
Well, I think we did an incredible job at balancing that approach this past year with 1482, and to be able to bring all the stakeholders from the apartment association to the realtors to the advocates for those that are renters, to the advocates to those that were homeless, and to the building associations, to be able to bring everybody to the table and to work out a term to where we could come up with an anti-rent gouging policy and then go that step further and to be able to address those that were being evicted unjustly, to be able to provide certainty and protection and to allow people to know that they can live in their home and know that that home is going to be theirs tomorrow too. Without being unjustly evicted, as well as rents being astronomically raised.
The issue of rent, I mean, we talk to a lot of people who can't afford to pay rent. That's why we have so many people sharing. That's the supply and demand. Is that ever going to change?
I think it is. So I spent a few months right after we recessed in September taking a statewide tour and visiting the larger cities, both in the Valley, Southern California, as well as the Bay, and then the northern part of the Valley, addressing those very issues about that kind of a change and trying to figure out a way where we can address the affordability of housing. And what I found was that all across the state, each municipality has the powers to implement fees. And in some cases, there was one city that we found where before a shovel ever hit the ground, $170,000 was being charged in impact fees, which obviously impacts the affordability of a house. I think there's got to be some things that must be done, has to happen, not just on a state level, but also in conjunction on a local level, to where we all partner to make sure that we're funding our infrastructure, but we're also bringing down the housing cost as well.
There's a proposed initiative to strictly enforce quality of life crimes, such as public drunkenness, with offenders sent to special courts and into social programs. If you complete the program, your record gets cleared. Do you support that?
I will need to do a little more research on this. I've heard bits and pieces. On the surface, yes, I think we need to give people a hand up and provide not just a shelter, but the means of re-educating. There's many good private programs in the area, but maybe they're lesser known. And I do think that there needs to be a collaboration of those private organizations, church organizations, and the public organizations. And coming together, we can solve a lot of this, which, yes, part of the housing crisis is opioid addiction and these other social issues. So what is the root cause of that being caused? So on a high level, yes, but I will need to delve into it more.
Ms. Devereaux.
One thing when I hear quality of life, I hear a lot of people, what that means to them is get houseless people out of sight, out of my sight. I think that's backwards. I think we have to recognize that, you asked me about Concord. In Concord, we've met 2% of our mandated affordable housing crisis. That's just completely out of control. That's immoral. It is not what we should be doing. So we have to focus first. If you want quality of life for people, you have to get them in a house. That's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you are, you go for the most basic need that you can. So we need to do that. There's a lot of talk about the naval station. I think that unless we get affordable housing, that is what that has to be used for. I know a lot of people would like to use it for shopping or offices or whatever. I don't think that's the priority. Now, I'm a socialist. As a socialist, I come for people first. I don't look at what the businesses want. I don't look at the moneyed interests. I look at what the people need, and I think we need to build a society around that. So I think if we want quality of life, any quality of life thing, first we have to put people in houses, because it's really hard to overcome the other problems if you are just trying to survive day to day.
We talk a lot about affordable housing, that we need more of it. Where's the money going to come from?
Where's the money going to come from affordable housing? Well, I think we have to recognize that in the economic system we have, which rewards corporations and billionaires, that is the only thing that makes that a question. If we didn't cater our society to profit for the rich, then that wouldn't even be a question that makes sense. Now, we all assume that can't that's just the way it is. I don't think it has to be the way it is. I can't remember who it was, but they said that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Well, maybe it's time we start imagining.
Mr. Grayson.
Yes. First, you had mentioned something about diversion programs, and I think those diversion programs work really well, especially when there is the opioid crisis and there are other situations and litigating circumstances to why maybe somebody did something that's unacceptable and against the law. but to incarcerate them could very well perpetuate criminal activity in their life. So investing in people, but also investing in people in housing. Housing is not the easiest subject to talk about because there are so many dynamics that go into the issue of housing. Not just affordable housing, but housing that's affordable. To create that upflow where someone who is renting maybe an affordable situation can upflow into a better renting situation and then one day meet their dream of actually owning a home, which means that not only do we need affordable housing, we need middle-class housing that's affordable to be able to provide even a greater inventory on the lower levels to be able to create that open door for people to enter into home ownership. Where it's going to come from, as far as funding for affordable housing, I think Senator Atkins did an incredible job in running a bill that provided revenue specific to homelessness and addressing affordable housing. I think the real key is trying to get the money or the revenue to flow in that stream to the right organizations, and I am a huge proponent of public-private partnerships, finding the affordable housing developers, partnering them in grants through government revenues to be able to get the actual product that we're looking for and get it out of bureaucracy.
Yeah, I covered a story right before Christmas in Oakland where at the Fruitville Village, they have a brand new apartment building, and people who were unhoused are now in apartments.
Yes.
And it was a public-private partnership. Do you think more of those would help this problem?
Perhaps, but I would like to address, I'm a hardworking American and maybe deemed a capitalist, if you will, but I've been afforded many opportunities, as I'm sure many Californians have. I put myself through school. I was the oldest of 7 kids. And I've paid a lot of taxes. And one of the things, for example, the train from Fresno to LA, that project was a lot of tax dollars, and there's nothing to show for it. So I would like to see more accountability on those type of projects. Those funds could have very well been used for something like this, and the money is just gone. So in answer to your question, yes, that is exciting, but also we need to focus on not just those without a home, not the billionaires, but there's the hardworking middle class that the moms and dads are working hard every day. Their kids are going to school, they're commuting, and there needs to be some benefits afforded to them as well, or some tax breaks to allow them to continue to do that.
What kind of tax breaks do you think middle-class people need?
Yeah, well, I just know for even on what we pay for our water bills, our gas bills, and we're still having fires and power outages, there seems to just be an incremental increase in taxes, but it's not coming back to benefit these hardworking folks that are paying these taxes.
Well, my PG&E bill is not a tax. Either I pay or I don't have power. So.
Right, but a property tax, I apologize. I'm kind of associating that with the cost of homeownership.
Do you know about SB 50, Senator Wiener's bill for housing?
I'm not as familiar with that, no.
I am familiar with that.
I will leave it to the Assembly member to.
Do you think it's a good idea?
I think the intents are there. I think that I know Senator Wiener.
Yeah, and this bill would essentially advocate for more transit-focused housing.
Transit-focused. So I, being directly involved in that with AB 2923 and Assemblymember David Chu, in making sure that we address transit-oriented development and building around BART stations. And the whole purpose behind that was to try to get housing where transportation and housing come together to work together, and to be able to get cities to help propagate that housing so that people would not feel the need to have to jump in a car and do a 2-hour commute on the freeway when they had access literally right outside their door to a BART station. Again, good intents. Our purpose is to try to put the masses around trans hubs so that you have this synergy between job, transportation, and lifestyle. And Senator Wiener, Senate Bill 50 kind of takes that a little bit further than just transit-oriented. It also puts it in other parts of infill within the city, and it does create challenges. It creates challenges for local zoning laws. It creates challenges for cities. But in some cases, cities have purposely used their zoning laws and their general plans to control the types of housing that are allowed within their city limits.
I understand 50 would advocate for more higher density housing.
Much higher density housing, yes.
And then would people want to live there? So this is a bill that would essentially advocate for, say, at the Concord BART station, building apartment buildings or condos or something, but higher density.
Sure.
Do you think people would go for that? And where would they build it around the Concord BART station?
The Concord BART station, well, that is a question exactly where. I know there's a abandoned Blockbuster video close by that is not being used for anything. I think people might go for that. I mean, like I say, if people need a house over their head, give them a house. It's that, it's that simple. With the housing crisis that we have, with the unaffordability, anything we can do to alleviate the problem of people sleeping on the streets is good. Now, I mean, would everyone like to live next to a busy train? Probably not. I think that it's preferable to not living anywhere at all, not having a house at all. So I'm open to any solution that gets people in houses.
The state's increased the minimum wage. It's now like $15 an hour in most places. Is this a good or bad idea?
Well, I think back to as a teenager when I was working, and it's an
That was
incentive
like
to work.
4 years ago, right?
Right. No. So I am torn with this because I see both sides. But for a hard work, someone who's not on the streets and working hard and trying to contribute, and I think that is good. But we also, again, have to look at that it's not penalizing the employers to the point where then they're having to lay off employees, and what good does that do? Now you had someone that was working and no longer can. So,
do you think employers really are saying that they can't afford to pay the $15 an hour?
I don't think it's so much that as all the other costs incurred. But I'd have to research and look more at the data. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. So.
$15 an hour sounds like, people say I want $15 an hour. Is that $15 an hour really good enough?
Is it really good enough? Well, let me ask you this. Do they have to work more than one job to live in a house, to pay the rent, to feed themselves? I think that if one job can pay them a living wage, then that's fine. If that can't do it, then it needs to go up. Of course, we live now in a society where people, we hear that the economy is booming, but people are having to work 2 or more jobs. The biggest thing crowdfunding is used for is to pay for medical costs. So I think I think we just have to look and ask ourselves, what does that $15 do? Does it give people the quality of life, the ability to live?
If you made $15 an hour, could you pay your rent?
Could I pay my rent? I think I and my wife could. I don't know if I was single, if I could.
Yeah.
But yes, I think what we have to do is we have to look at human need, and we have to meet that. $15, I don't know. It's been a while since I have been single and had to pay for this all myself.
Sounds like a lot, but when you really look at it, really, it's really not that much.
Well, what's the cost of housing? The cost of
That's
everything.
the issue. $15 an hour. I mean, California is one of them. It's progressive and it's getting to that point. But where do we go from here?
$15 an hour definitely does not pay the rent, not in the Bay Area at least. And so it is a careful balance to be able to know that we can elevate or raise the minimum wage, but then also understand that the cost on businesses need us to move other levers at the same time to make sure that, okay, if we're going to require $15 minimum wage, then we are also passing policies that allow businesses the flexibility to prosper and to be able to do what they do best, which is why they opened that business. So yeah, I think it's incumbent upon state officials to be very mindful that for everything we do, there are in many cases unintended consequences that we must consider before we push things to a particular threshold of no return.
So I'm a small business owner. Give me 3 things you're going to do for me when you get elected.
I'm going to help reduce the taxes that you are currently having to incur. I would like to get a summit or get input as to what your needs are. Obviously, not all are going to align, but to really hear from the small business owners. And third, I would like to local citizens can propose bills as well. So maybe get some of these business owners, let's get some legislation. It doesn't always have to come from our assemblymen. We actually, the way our government is designed in California, is we as citizens can propose bills too to help our situation.
And there have been some really good bills proposed by citizens.
Yes.
And there have been some really bad bills proposed by
Sure,
citizens.
yes.
What do you
yes.
think of this?
What I would do for you as a small business owner? Well, first, I would focus on building a society where your employees would not be terrorized, where your migrant employees would not have to be afraid that they'd be scooped up if they show up to work. I would work on and push for complete non-compliance with ICE. I would insist that our communities be truly sanctuary spaces. And I think that if we can have communities where people can feel safe and secure and taken care of and not afraid, I think that lifts everything up.
So I'm 23 years old. I came to this country with my parents when I was 2 from El Salvador, Guatemala. I now have an opportunity with DACA to get a job, to go to college. What about my parents? What should we do with my parents?
Parents should stay here with them if that's what they want to do.
But should they be put on a path to citizenship?
Absolutely. If that is their choice, then they should definitely be put on a path to citizenship.
Mr. Grayson.
I thank you for bringing this topic up because really the issue, whether it's of DACA or any other immigrant issue that we're facing, is the real discussion about our broken system of a path to citizenship. And it has to be fixed, it has to be addressed, and we're doing everything we can do on a state level to try to band-aid the situation until the federal government can finally come together and create some kind of reasonable pathway that doesn't take 20, 30, and in some cases 40 years to be able to get to the end road and claim their citizenship at the end of their life.
So you have a situation where we have sanctuary cities like San Francisco, and you have a gentleman who is arrested for, let's just say, assault, robbery, assault, DUI in a car and injured somebody. That person is not a citizen. Should that person be deported without due process?
Well, the current laws say that they should. So
Well,
aside
the current law
from
don't say without due process.
Okay, so fair enough. But yes, I actually was an acquaintance of Kate Steinle, so this is an issue near and dear to my heart. I don't believe both of my grandparents were immigrants, so I don't believe that on that alone that means an individual, that's a justification of their character. But when any citizen commits a crime or a non-citizen, then they need to be held accountable to the laws of this country. And I do think that that is a viable solution because I don't think people are leaving their home country to get away from that type of disrespect of humanity. And so we here need to be encouraging that.
You say you don't think they're leaving to get...
Sorry, they're leaving their countries that are full of murders, crime-ridden, right, to come to America. So if we don't have a safe and continue with our law and order, then we are no different than the countries that they're coming from. So how does that improve their whole point of coming here is to get away from that. So if it's still existing here and we're still allowing it to happen, then there's really I don't see a difference in our democracy versus their country.
May I point something out? I think that it's important also to push back on this question because there's a huge perception that migrant communities are more likely to commit crime from the top down. In fact, that is the opposite.
Right.
There is less criminality in migrant communities, and I think that has to be acknowledged.
That is the statistics do say that. You have a couple that runs this great Peruvian restaurant. For years. They've employed people, they've paid their taxes, but they aren't citizens. What should happen to them?
Yeah. So actually, I have volunteered at the naturalization ceremonies and just having conversations with the folks as they're waiting. And I've been pleasantly surprised that the majority have not waited 10 or 40 years. It's been fairly reasonable. So, and I'm sure there's exceptions to everything, but I do think that there's maybe a little bit more hype on this taking 40 years. That's more the exception than the rule. But again, I'd need to explore more of the data. But I do find, just from talking to citizens, that's not been their experience.
Yeah, there are people who actually, I think it was in Chicago, a pizza restaurant where they deported the owners and they had to shut the restaurant down. And I think that that defeats the purpose of people coming here, becoming productive members of society, and then because they smoked a joint when they were 18, they get deported. That's crazy. What can California, I mean, you say California's doing all it can, but obviously you can't give somebody citizenship.
Correct.
You can't, I mean, if the person's committing crime, should they just, I mean, what should we do?
Well, obviously, if they're committing a crime, we have what is due process. And I'm a strong believer in the due process. But I'm also a strong believer in justice. Justice more than just a written law that's on a piece of paper, but a moral law that's in each and every one of our hearts for humanity in itself. And to be able to allow people to have that opportunity to be able to come in and prove themselves and be a part of our community as contributing people and citizens, I think we can make way for them and make room for them in our community and provide them the shelter and provide them the protection that they need from a broken system.
It's a great conversation. Thanks to our panel for answering some of these important questions. Each of you now will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement, and you got the first one. You got the first one here.
Okay, dearest neighbors, I am a socialist because I see all around me a world with priorities that are turned upside down. We've talked about some of these tonight. I've seen killer cops that serve and protect themselves, not the people. Just this week in Oakland, we saw cops with flak jackets and heavy armored military vehicles throw mothers and babies on the street who just wanted a place to live. I see migrant communities who are terrorized, put in concentration camps. I see kids in cages. I see banks, corporations, and speculators gain housing markets, drive people onto the street while houses stand deliberately empty. I'm a socialist because I believe that with solidarity among poor, working, and oppressed peoples, we can set things right. We can chart our own course into a better world. Together, we win. Please join me in this struggle. You can contact me with questions and to volunteer at CassieDevereaux.org. I'm Call Me Cassie D on Twitter and on Facebook at Cassandra Devereaux for Assembly 2020. People's Alliance is also on Facebook as People's Alliance Bay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in.
Yes.
Ms. Proctor.
Yes. Well, again, I love California, and I see a very different California. I see many hardworking folks commuting every day on the freeways, trying to earn a living, and striving for that. So I, again, want to make it affordable to stay here and to benefit from California. We've all worked hard, raised our families, would like to retire. So I would like to propose things that enable us to do that and enjoy this beautiful state.
Thank you. Mr. Grayson.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the host, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this event together. My name is Tim Grayson, and your Assembly member for District 14. It was not long ago that we came out of really hard economic times, and now we enjoy a robust economy. With that said, there are still some folks that are falling behind because of the rising cost of living in the state of California, so much so that it's caused housing to become unaffordable, which is why we have conversations around affordable housing. But I also want to talk about housing that's affordable to the middle class, those who may be renting but have a dream, a California dream of one day owning their own home. But this dream can only be accomplished if we have the infrastructure that supports jobs and a strong economy. This dream can only be realized and become reality if we have the education and the training to create skills that not only prepare people for not just this economy, but also for future economies that we will be facing down the road. My name is Tim Grayson. I am your Assembly member for District 14, and I kindly ask for your vote.
Thank you very much. That concludes our forum for candidates running for the California State Assembly 14th District. And the number of cities in that district, it goes all the way from some part of Solano County, all the way down to Concord, and I forget all the cities, but it's a whole bunch in this district. Once again, our candidates, Cassandra Devereaux, Janelle Proctor, Tim Grayson, thank you so much. For more information on the candidates, visit the website votersedge.org. To view the broadcast online, go to www.cocovote.us. The Elections Office would like to remind you to go online to check your voter registration status and think about whether you want to get your ballot by mail. I'm Bob Butler, KCBS Radio. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to vote by March 3rd.